The Middle East's long and turbulent history of conflict has entered yet another dangerous and unpredictable phase, marked by escalating tensions and renewed violence that threaten to destabilize the entire region. Once again, Gaza finds itself at the very heart of this crisis, its densely populated streets and battered neighborhoods becoming the focal point of global attention and concern. The Israeli Security Cabinet's recent approval of Prime Minister Netanyahu's controversial five-point plan for Gaza has ignited a fierce international backlash, drawing sharp criticism from governments and organizations around the world, but especially from Turkey, a key regional player. Turkish President Erdogan has strongly condemned the plan, denouncing it as a blueprint for permanent occupation and urging Muslim nations to unite in opposition. His words have resonated across the Muslim world, fueling protests and diplomatic efforts to counter Israel's move. Israel, on the other hand, insists that the plan is essential to dismantle Hamas, restore order, and guarantee long-term security for its citizens. However, critics argue that the plan amounts to a land grab, one that will only deepen the already dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza and further inflame regional tensions. As these opposing narratives clash on the world stage, the international community is left grappling with urgent questions about international law, national sovereignty, and the elusive prospects for lasting peace in the region. The stakes have never been higher, and the consequences of failure could be catastrophic. So, what exactly does Israel's five-point plan propose, and why has it provoked such a strong and polarized reaction? In the next segment, we'll break down the key arguments, explore the perspectives of all sides, and examine what's truly at stake for the people of Gaza, Israel, and the wider world. Turkey's response to the unfolding crisis has been both swift and uncompromising, signaling a new era in its foreign policy approach. The government has made it clear that it will not stand by in the face of what it sees as grave injustice. President Erdogan has taken center stage, launching a vigorous diplomatic offensive against Israel's controversial Gaza plan. His speeches have resonated not only within Turkey, but across the Muslim world, calling for solidarity and decisive action. Ankara has denounced the plan as both genocidal and expansionist, warning that it threatens the stability of the entire region. The Turkish government is urging Muslim-majority nations to set aside their differences and form a united front, emphasizing that only through collective action can meaningful change be achieved. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has been instrumental in rallying support, calling for a powerful coalition through the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Turkey's aim is to transform its condemnation into a broad, multilateral movement that can exert real pressure on the international stage. Backing its words with concrete action, Turkey has halted all trade with Israel, sending a strong economic message. It has also joined the genocide case at the International Court of Justice, seeking legal accountability for alleged crimes. The Turkish government is demanding an immediate and lasting ceasefire, the unrestricted flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and full accountability for those accused of war crimes. These demands are echoed by citizens and activists across the country. President Erdogan has vowed that Turkey's struggle will not end until the suffering in Gaza ceases and those responsible for the devastation are brought to justice. He has pledged unwavering support for the Palestinian people. This uncompromising stance has positioned Turkey as the leading challenger to Israel's plans, drawing global attention and reshaping alliances on the world stage. The stakes are higher than ever, and Turkey is determined to use every diplomatic, economic, and legal tool at its disposal to defend its principles and support the people of Gaza. At the heart of the controversy is Israel's five-point plan for Gaza, presented as a roadmap for post-conflict security. The plan's first priorities, the complete disarmament of Hamas and the safe return of all hostages. Next, Israel calls for the comprehensive demilitarization of Gaza and indefinite Israeli security control over the territory. Critics argue this amounts to reoccupation, ending hopes for Palestinian sovereignty. The final point proposes a new civil administration for Gaza, excluding both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, possibly involving regional Arab states. However, the lack of clarity on who would govern under Israeli oversight has fueled skepticism. Many see the plan as a way to install a compliant leadership while Israel retains ultimate power. The plan's ambiguity and scope have made it a lightning rod for international criticism. Israel defends its plan as a security necessity, not an act of conquest. Officials insist the goal is to prevent future attacks and avoid repeating past mistakes, not to permanently occupy Gaza. Netanyahu's government argues that previous withdrawals led to Hamas's rise and ongoing violence, making security control essential. Israel claims no viable alternative has been offered that guarantees its safety, framing the plan as a pragmatic response to an intractable threat. The world is asked to see the situation through the lens of Israeli security, not just international norms. Turkey's call for unity has resonated across the Muslim world, sparking a wave of diplomatic activity and renewed focus on the crisis. Turkish leaders have positioned themselves at the forefront, urging fellow Muslim-majority nations to take a firm and collective stand. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or OIC, has echoed Ankara's condemnation, amplifying Turkey's message on the international stage. The OIC, representing 57 member states, is the world's second-largest intergovernmental body after the United Nations. The OIC denounces Israel's plan as a dangerous escalation and a violation of international law, warning that such actions threaten to destabilize the entire region and undermine decades of diplomatic efforts. By elevating the issue to a major global concern, the OIC is pushing for urgent international attention and action, calling on the United Nations and other global powers to intervene. The group argues that indefinite Israeli control would destroy any chance for peace, making a two-state solution nearly impossible and deepening the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. In response, the OIC has called for an emergency meeting to coordinate a stronger, unified response, aiming to present a clear and forceful position to the world. Egypt, Gaza's neighbor and longtime mediator, has also condemned the plan, voicing its deep concerns over the potential consequences for regional stability and security. Egyptian officials cite fears of instability and mass displacement, warning that any escalation could trigger a humanitarian catastrophe at their border and beyond. Egypt's opposition carries significant weight due to its proximity, its role as a mediator, and its own security concerns, especially regarding the sensitive Gaza-Egypt border. The convergence of Turkey, the OIC, and Egypt signals a growing consensus in the Muslim world against Israel's approach, with these key players now working more closely than ever before. This unified stance transforms criticism into a significant diplomatic force, increasing pressure on Israel and its allies to reconsider their strategies. Israel now faces a coordinated bloc of opposition that cannot be easily ignored, as the Muslim world's collective voice grows louder on the global stage. Beneath the diplomatic battles lies a devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Aid organizations warn of famine, with children and families suffering from relentless bombardment, displacement, and the collapse of essential infrastructure. Turkey and others accuse Israel of using starvation as a weapon, while Israel cites security concerns for restricting aid. The images of suffering have become global symbols, fueling outrage and calls for accountability. The trauma inflicted on Gaza's population will have lasting consequences, regardless of political outcomes. Critics argue that the humanitarian crisis is not a side effect, but a central point of contention in the conflict. Accusations of forced displacement and genocide are at the heart of Turkey's campaign. The human cost is now a battlefield of narratives, shaping international opinion and policy. Western nations have responded with caution, balancing support for Israel's security with concerns over civilian casualties and humanitarian law. The US affirms Israel's right to self-defense but urges a path toward a two-state solution, which Israel's plan appears to undermine. Germany and other European powers have restricted military exports to Israel and called for a ceasefire and increased aid, but stopped short of outright condemnation. Their carefully calibrated language reflects a desire to maintain alliances while expressing unease over the conflict's direction. This diplomatic ambiguity creates space for Turkey and the OIC to lead the opposition. As the conflict drags on, Western governments face growing pressure to align their values with their actions. The conflict is also being fought in international courts, with the genocide case at the International Court of Justice and war crimes investigations at the International Criminal Court. Turkey's participation in these cases formalizes its accusations and seeks global legal judgment. The ICJ's preliminary orders and the ICC's pursuit of arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders add legal weight to the diplomatic struggle. These proceedings, though slow, can influence international opinion and restrict the movement of accused leaders. For critics of Israel, the courts offer hope for accountability. For Israel, they represent a major legal and public relations challenge. The legal front underscores that actions in Gaza have consequences beyond the battlefield. Law and diplomacy are now central arenas in the fight over Gaza's future. The standoff over Gaza is a defining moment that could reshape the Middle East. Turkey argues that only a united Muslim world can influence the outcome and protect Palestinian rights. A coordinated bloc of nations could shift the global narrative and increase pressure on Israel and its allies. Yet, forging and maintaining unity among diverse Muslim nations is a monumental challenge. The crisis exposes deep fractures in the global order between security and law, sovereignty and human rights. The path forward is uncertain, with the potential for both escalation and new dialogue. Whether solidarity can be achieved will shape not just Gaza's future, but the region's for years to come.